What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Perhaps. It's good to be here. By the way, for the video version, I got that big sketch pad behind me. I was actually there last week too, and it's because I'm doing these talks or sermons or reflections. It's kind of a combination of things on my Patreon page. I'm writing, drawing illustrations with them, so that's what that is there for. And you should check that out. We just started, we're a few weeks in. I got to do another one for this Sunday. We're dropping them every Sunday for now. And you should really check it out. You can support me, support this podcast, support my work, support me being able to keep doing this stuff, make it more sustainable, and also be able to tune into me going deeper on trying to cultivate a space for radical hope and imagination. That's what we're all about here. And so check out patreon.com/Damon Garcia. And I usually forget to say that. I think I've forgotten to say that like 15 episodes in a row. I mentioned it a little bit last week, but yeah, go check that out. Also, let's say this at the beginning. We need more community. We need community more than ever. Not just the TV show. We need real community, solidarity, connection with actual other people. Even, we can have community on the internet, but even beyond the internet. And I say that because it's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And it's partly why I do what I do, trying to build a community of people who are interested in talking about the things I'm interested in talking about, interested in building a better world, stretching our imagination so that we can have a freer world for everyone, not just a select few, being able to have a community, just the people that listen to this podcast, have a community that I can connect to. And also, we need that offline too. And honestly, it's been a struggle for me to find that kind of community. I have my own journey of trying to find people to connect with. And it's been seasons, seasons where I've been able to connect strongly with people, other seasons where it's a lot harder. And especially after the COVID lockdowns, and the number that did on all of our abilities to interact with people, that was really hard for a lot of people, and it was really hard for me. I don't know if I've recovered all the social skills that I feel like I lost during that whole thing. I was already suffering in the social skills department. I think I'm a bit more introverted. And yeah, it's interesting. I know a lot of you out there thinking about that too. And it's very intentional, by the way, that it's harder than ever to find community. It's harder than ever to connect with others. You look at our capitalist, consumerist culture that is designed to keep us more and more isolated, harder and harder to find people, easier to just stay in our homes, on the internet, on the phone, that dang phone. Everything moving toward less and less human connection with technology and AI, designed to just frame that the ultimate American dream as one where we can where we don't need anyone else, where we could just have our property that we stay inside and order everything that we need and don't need anybody else. But that's fake. That's fake independence. Because when you're wealthy enough to, quote unquote, not need anybody else, you are actually still very dependent. The work that is required of others to serve the wealthy and to provide anything they order, anything they demand and desire. Yeah, there's people doing that work. It's all an illusion. And so this is something I also read about in my book that I got coming out. called You Don't Need a Calling, an anti-capitalist manifesto for a life of purpose. And it comes out June 23rd of next year, but you can pre-order it right now, anywhere you pre-order books. Even if it's a local bookstore, you could go there and ask them to look it up or call them, or if they have a website, you might be able to do it and get them to pre-order it for you. And then you pick it up the day of, or if they deliver it, that's awesome too. But literally anywhere, go pre-order it. And there's going to be an ebook. I think you could pre-order the ebook now. There's going to be an audiobook. That's not available for pre-order yet, though. I still got to record that. And right now I'm in the middle of the process of getting endorsements for the book and finishing up some of the proofreading. It's pretty much there. But yeah, it's going to be good. And I'm excited for y'all to read it. And a big theme of the book is how important it is to build community right now. Another subtitle that you could justifiably use is, it could be called You Don't Need a Calling, You Just Need Community. And you can make it a little longer and say, because from community is where you can find all these small, simple callings, is where you can find purpose and discover that. Purpose is simply how you show up in the world. But that title's way longer. I like the title we went with, but yeah, it's really important. I'm also thinking about it because I just came back from Minneapolis. I live in Central Coast, California, so I had to fly over there and got to stay with my friend Mason Meninga. Super awesome guy, good friend. And we're there for Theology Beer Camp. You may have heard me mention that in a few episodes about going and check that out, meeting me there. And it's a bunch of podcasters will go and a bunch of scholars. Those are the people who are like part of some of the panels that they do. It's a lot of panels. And also some of those academics do some awesome talks. And it was started from Trip Fuller and his podcast, Homebrewed Christianity Podcast. Go check that out. It's a really good one. It's been going since I found out when I was there since 2008. I was listening since 2013, I think. But yeah, it was awesome to be there. And I'll do a bit of a recap of my time there in Theology Beer Camp, but also in Minneapolis. I stayed a couple more days because I was able to stay with my homie Mason. And I brought my friend Orlando, who is very, very new to this world of theology nerds and people talking about like even Christianity or theology or spirituality beyond conservative Christianity, which is a lot more well known in the world. But it was cool to bring him along, and he helped me film some stuff. And I'm working on a film project that I'm going to be working on for like a very, very long time. And so we just filmed a little bit for that. And it's also going to be connected to the book. But it was cool to see him there and interacting with people, interacting with some of my friends and some of the other people we met there, and being able to see like, oh yeah, this isn't just Damon who talks like this. This isn't just Damon that I can have these conversations with. And it was funny because some of those conversations he was having was a little bit hard for him to follow as they were getting into some deep theologically nerdy stuff. There's a lot of fans of process theology, based on process philosophy. Alfred North Whitehead, basically everything is in a state of becoming, and even that applies to divinity. Also, a bunch of fans of liberation theology, which is a bit easier to grasp, about a God who seeks the liberation of the oppressed, a God who has a preferential option for the poor. And also some fans of some way more academic theology than that. And being able to have those conversations, and I was saying some of it was going over his head, and it was kind of hard for him to follow. But I told him some of these people that you're hearing yapping about this theology stuff in a way that's kind of hard to follow, you got to understand they also don't have that many people to talk to about this stuff. That's partly why they're really yapping and going so deep without thinking if everyone can understand the words they're saying, because they're finally in a space where they could just go all out. And that's cool to see for people to be able to have that space. And I think there's a bit of there's a variety of different types of people coming from different angles of why they're there. And so, yeah, there's, as you'd expect, the theology nerds, meaning, people who read a lot of theology books and academic books and are into some of these religion scholars. And then also people who have grown up in a more conservative Christianity and have deconstructed a lot of their old toxic religion and aren't really sure what they believe now, but they enjoy the open and welcoming space and being able to have conversations about this whole faith thing at a deeper level. And so, not everybody there is Christian. Not everybody there is a theology nerd. Even among the theology nerds, not all of them are Christian. But so it's a good mix. And it was cool to also see. Let me say some of the people that we went to a couple of sessions. Also, because the conversations were so good, I didn't get to go to that many sessions because we're having such good conversations. But I went to a few of them, which are good. And specifically, I wanted to say John Dominic Crossan, old school biblical scholar, historian, historical Jesus, pioneer. He was there, and I think he's around 93 years old now. And first off, if you know who he is, it's like already, it's like, oh, like you perk up a bit, like, oh, John Dominic Crossan. If you don't know who he is, he's a pretty big deal because of the scholarship he's been a part of around the historical Jesus. I mean, you take Jesus as a figure without assuming that everything in the Gospels is historical, but just place a figure who's talked about that way in the first century, place that figure into the historical context of the Roman Empire, which we know a lot about because part of being such a powerful empire, they made sure to document a lot. And from that context, also with the context of first century Second Temple Judaism, place them into that world, and you could see a lot of the Jesus stories and Jesus teachings from a different angle. So that's a very, very brief, surfacey summary of historical Jesus studies. But what's really cool is John Dominic Crossan, over the last around decade, has moved into a different area of study, really inspired by Eastern Orthodox images during early Christianity of theological concepts. Like he wrote a whole book on the resurrection, which was showing the illustrations from Eastern Orthodox depictions of the resurrection, which wasn't just a dude stepping out of a tomb, but was this beautiful, epic art of Jesus. So you have some of Jesus pulling Adam and Eve out of hell, or a bunch of other people rising with him, or defeating Satan as part of the resurrection, and just all this interesting symbolism that reveals that they clearly saw the resurrection as very communal, collective, not just individualized as this guy, as an individual, rose from the dead. Therefore, he's extremely exceptional and special. Therefore, he must be worshipped. That doesn't seem to be the theology around the resurrection in early Christianity, especially among some of the Eastern churches, even later. That individualized understanding is a lot more modern and definitely comes more from the Western church. Anyway, he wrote a whole book on that by making the focus of the book those images and saying, what can we learn from these images and the symbolism in these images, which was just very fascinating. But he's leaned in on that more and more and more. And he gave a whole talk about Paul, I forget which New Testament book, but when Paul, I think it's Romans, Corinthians, one of those, where Paul says that the earth, or what is it? The spirit is groaning with all, I gotta look this up. All these verses of Paul are mixed up together in my head. Yeah, groaning with creation. I'll keep talking while I look this up. But he gave a whole talk about that and being able to see a more evolutionary, see the Bible and the Jesus story from a more evolutionary perspective. Romans 8:22, about all creation has been growing together, as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. And he used that to just, and also using other images that depict that in a really creative way. And it was funny because my friend during that talk also had a hard time following. And then I had to tell him later, like, the stuff he's saying in this talk and the way he's saying it is actually pretty new, at least in the way he was putting it. People have talked like that before, but the way he was connecting everything is very new for him and also new for a lot of people there. So it's kind of like you're witnessing something being worked out in real time, not something that like we're all sitting there familiar with and just hearing again. And that was really special to see, but it's especially special to see this man in his old age and has survived longer than a lot of his peers in the past, and being able to find new inspiration and talk about new stuff in a new way. And I'm grateful to be there for that. It was also awesome to see Kelly Brown Douglas there, epic womanist theologian. She had her own session too, and my friend Ednaldo was so excited, saying, "That's my goat." And it was really cool to be there for that too, and be there to see all these people come together and be able to talk about, some of different ways of reading the Bible, but also liberation theology, a bit of process theology, being able to talk about ethics, modern, how do we respond to today's growing Christian nationalism, and how to take our faith seriously in this modern world. And it's not about just having hope that ignores the suffering of the world, as we see in a lot of religious spaces. And it's also not about just leaving your brain at the door and having a faith that just ignores modern scholarship and modern science, like a lot of religious spaces. Instead, it's a place where we can have those conversations and go deeper. So that was really cool to be a part of. And I'll also say something that kind of sucks is it's a whole lot of white people. I'll be honest about that. And I have some friends that don't go to Theology Beer Camp or Wild Goose or a bunch of other, I guess you could call them progressive Christian spaces, because that is also a lot of white people. Like, this is a larger issue in a lot of progressive Christian spaces, including local churches. Like, you try to look up a church that's actually cool, that actually is cool with gay people, that isn't going to tell you you're going to hell for having sex, or a space that has a more progressive theology and open theology, or cares a lot about social justice. And then you walk in and it's about 10 to 15 old white people. That's been an issue for a bunch of these spaces. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. And I mean, first of all, let's just talk about the history of these spaces. like a lot of people try to say, oh yeah, the people need to stop talking about racism because that's like an old thing a long time ago, and the civil rights movement happened, and we 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 changed some laws, and now things are good and people just need to get over it. Nah. Which I'm sure you know, like institutional racism is still very much a thing. And also the changes that have been made in the past, we're still living the consequences of a world that existed before those changes. Also, a lot of changes still need to be made. But one of those consequences of the old world is an old world where only white people got to speak on these subjects, these deep theological subjects, philosophical subjects, be able to have a platform, be able to have book deals, be able to be professors. And we're still living in that. I think it's a lot slower transition than people realize. And so because of that, I think there's still a lot of white people in leadership in progressive Christian spaces, especially because a lot of progressive Christian churches, I mean, let's just talk about the churches at first. Churches require you to have an MDiv, Master's in Divinity. And you think about, okay, who are the people that have the resources to be able to get a Master's in Divinity? Who are the people that have the support around them to be able to get that? It tends to be more white people. And then also before the old generation, also more white people. So that also reflects like who feels inspired to even follow that path in the first place. And when you see, oh, it's just a bunch of white people who are following that path, it also feels a little bit harder to find your fit in that world. And so, I mean, this is said about academic world in general. And then you get to events and you think about, okay, how do we get people to be a part of an event? Who do we schedule to speak at these events? Well, there's a lot more white people to choose from because of this history. And so it's a bit harder to not just choose, okay, this person's popular, they might be able to get people to buy a ticket. This person's popular, this person's popular, this person's popular. It's really easy to just find yourself, oh shoot, this is a whole list of just white people. And some people just stop there and say, oh well, and shrug. Theology Beer Camp, however, I know doesn't just stop there and shrug. And I know in past years and then this year, they've intentionally tried to get other speakers and other academics. And so this year, I think that there are also intentional in having Black liberation theologians and womanist theologians. And I forgot. A really great session I went was a whole session about the movie Sinners with Adam Clark, Kelly Brown Douglas, Juan Floyd Thomas, Stacey Floyd Thomas, and talking about Sinners from a bigger, deeper theological perspective and historical perspective. It was really cool. Also, a lot of these events can't really afford to pay speakers, either be able to just pay them a small amount or not at all, like some other events that have a whole bunch of speakers and none of them are being paid. They just get a free ticket, like Wild Goose. And I had a talk with one of the guys who was on the board at Wild Goose, and we had a good long conversation and saying, I think this is a big reason why there's so many white people and so many white speakers, because you think, okay, who can afford to, I mean, you're literally paying to go when you're not getting paid, paying for the flight, paying for the stay. And when that's the requirement, you're going to get mostly upper middle class white people. And then you think of, okay, who can afford to buy tickets for this, for an event that isn't even breaking even, also tend to be more white people. because of the whole history of class and race and capitalism and how this world has been for a very long time. And so it's not just the very easy interpretation of saying, oh, it's a bunch of white people, that must mean it's only for white people. There's a deeper history here. And I think it helps to be able to look at the material conditions of how some of these progressive Christian spaces, churches, events, academy, all of that, how it results in so many white people. And also, again, when it is a bunch of white people, it just continues to look like, oh, this is just for white people. So it becomes that kind of cycle. And there needs to be more effort in changing that. I don't know all the answers for changing that. I do believe a lot of these spaces do want to change, and some of them are trying to change. Like, I've talked to progressive Christian pastors who feel really awkward that their church is filled with just a bunch of white people, who feel really awkward that their whole denomination is filled with like 90% white people. And people are trying, I think, genuinely to figure it out. Some people are just saying they want it to change, but aren't doing anything. But I believe we're going to see a lot of these spaces die, because that's just the way of the world. That's just the way of institutions in general. And we already see a lot of progressive Christian spaces dying out, and Christian spaces in general. And the rest that don't die out are going to need a change. And I want to hang out with the people who are down for change. And I have a good crew of people when I go to Theology Beer Camp that are down for change, including Tripp. And I think I because I have my crew of people that I connect with, and even have online friends because of the work I do that show up to Theology Beer Camp and I could hang out with and be in community with. Because of that, I feel comfortable going to Theology Beer Camp. But anyone who doesn't have that and is just going to attend and feels like they can't do it with just mostly white people, I get it. I get that too. And I think there's a difference between, like, do you want to be there for the gradual changes, or do you want to just do your own thing and maybe show up once there's more change? I think either one depends on what you personally want to do. And I don't think either side of that should try to convince the other to join their side on that. It's a very personal decision, I think. And so I think Theology Beer Camp is evolving in a lot of ways and will continue to evolve. And perhaps podcast title drop, perhaps I'll even have my own session next, a breakout session next year at next Theology Beer Camp, which I don't know where it's going to be, but it should be in October. Every year it's in October. But and every year they have it in a different place. But my book is going to be out next year. And so I'm trying to do as much as possible when my book comes out. And so I was talking to Tripp, and we might be able to have, it's way too early to try to schedule things. So I'll let you know if it's a for sure thing when I know. But yeah, I might have my own breakout session there, talk a bit more about my book, and to do some like creative back and forth around the subject of my book too, because I'll get more to that in a little bit. But I just want to wrap up this recap and say we need more than just Theology Beer Camp. Like, I think it'll keep evolving, which is great, and I'll be around for that. And we also need other kinds of events for other kinds of people. And we need people who are able to build these communities and these networks of communities. And I don't really know how to do that right now, specifically because of the money. Like these spaces that exist right now, events and churches and conferences and stuff like that, like there's not money in that. And some of them lose money every time they do something, or are barely breaking even, or I see places shutting down all the time, quitting, having to cancel the whole vision they had and do something else. It's happening all the time. And it's hard also to just get people to show up for stuff. And so it's going to take a lot of creativity, a whole lot of creativity and experimentation. And I think what I hope to see in the future is people starting small things, small little gatherings, figuring it out, making it scrappy, not needing to be so fancy, and try to grow out from that. That's what I would like to see. Let me know, y'all, if you know of any cool events, gatherings, conferences that you've really enjoyed going to and being a part of. I'd be interested if anyone has their own thoughts on that. And yeah, let's talk about what I was going to say about the book real quick. Like I said, a big part of the book is talking about the importance of building community. And so when the book comes out, I do want to do more like in-person stuff and be able to talk with people, not just talk at people, not just do a talk and sign books, but be able to talk with people and hear from them about communities they're building, or visit any communities that are out there that are doing really cool stuff, and see if I can bring any perspective that would help them, and also learn from them. And so yeah, when that book comes out, I do want to do more in-person stuff. Let me know if you're listening to this and you're like, yo, I got a church that you got to come visit, or I got a group that you got to come visit. I got a book club, even if it's just like a Zoom meeting, book club Zoom meeting. I'm down to be a part of that when it comes time. And so let me know if that sounds interesting to you. And now let me talk a bit more about Minneapolis. Me and my friends stayed a couple more days with Mason and saw a bit more of Minneapolis. First time over there. I've hardly visited anywhere, by the way. Like the few places outside of California that I visited has been because of the work I do and being able to find people to stay with, or sometimes get paid, or get help with the flight or something. And it's been really cool to be able to visit these places like New Orleans. I went to New York. I went to Missouri, Springfield, Missouri. Been to Denver, Colorado. That's where last year's Theology Beer Camp was. And it's been so interesting because I'm just in Central Coast, California. And sometimes we'll drive to LA with my friends, and some places between my home and LA, and that's kind of it. And Minneapolis was different. Just seeing like how all the houses and buildings look different from each other, which I guess has something to do with like less regulations and building. I don't know. There's a whole lore to it, but Minneapolis was really cool, and I want to go back. So give me a reason to go back, people. If you're in Minneapolis, we got to figure something out. But I was hanging out with Mason, who's lived there for a few years, and we're talking about things we could do, places we could visit, what's in Minneapolis. And he was telling me about what makes Minneapolis so unique and why he loves it. And he was telling me that, yeah, it's really different here. There's also a lot of leftists here, a lot of communists and anarchist homies, and Also, like a good chunk of people who work in local government were endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America, and how powerful and how different that is and powerful it can be. And also telling me I need to go check out the George Floyd Memorial. And as he was telling me all this, I was like agreeing and saying, yeah. But I was already thinking of some places I wanted to visit. And then when he finished telling me all of this, I was like, yeah, I also want to visit the Mall of America. And he was like, shut up, bro. Do not go to the Mall of America. It just sounded awful inserting it in that point of the conversation. Like the Mall of America, the biggest mall in the country, maybe the world. I don't know about but definitely the country. But it's huge, huge, huge. It has a whole theme park inside with roller coasters and everything. And I saw it online a few times. I was like, I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to see the big mall. Mostly I couldn't picture actual roller coasters in a mall. I needed to see it. So we did visit the George Floyd Memorial, and we visited the Mall of America. First, the George Floyd Memorial was really interesting. My friend Kevin Nye took me and my friend to go check it out. It's interesting because it's a whole memorial and garden and a whole lot that's still sitting there. And my friend was saying that they don't want to remove this. Well, that the city kind of low-key does want to remove it. And also that store that called the cops on George Floyd definitely wants all that stuff out. But they also don't want to face the backlash if they try to remove anything. And I met a guy there that told us he shows up every day to keep up the space. And there's also some other people that do the same thing. And it was so interesting to be in that space and see how the community is still holding that there. And you have all these signs everywhere saying abolish the police and fuck ICE. It's all there. It's like their own space. It took me by the police precinct that they had burned down, which I wrote about in my book, and The God Who Riots. And it was all fenced off, and it said future home of the Democratic Center of Minneapolis, I think it said. But my friend also said, like, yeah, they don't know what to do with this space either. they know they probably shouldn't make it a police building again to avoid backlash, but they're not sure what to do with it. And it was so interesting. And Mall of America was cool. It was all right. My friend Mason actually said, like, it's just a mall but bigger. And when we first went in and saw all these roller coasters, I was like, nah, this is different. And then we got to the second floor and then the third floor, and I was like, oh yeah, he's right. This is just a mall, but bigger. I've seen all these stores before. But the roller coasters, it was a whole Nickelodeon world. Big old SpongeBob, big old Patrick, big old Squidward, kids riding. It was big rides. And there was these kids riding this thing that was spinning around, and this kid, every time he spun toward me and my friend on the ground, was like 6'7", 6'7". He was so stoked to troll us like that. And that was the Mall of America. And then we also visited the Augsburg offices, Augsburg Press, which is the parent company for Broadleaf, which is the publisher that published my first book, The God Who Riots, and my next book, You Don't Need a Calling. And I hung out with my editor, Lisa, and in this like little conference room. And it was very interesting to just be there. Like I've had plenty of Zoom meetings and emails with Lisa. I never met her in person. And to just be there in that conference room, and I kept saying, like, what decisions were made in this conference room? Like, is this where you talked about my book? And yeah, it was a really good conversation with her, and being able to talk a bit about some of my thoughts now as some time has passed since finishing the book, and I'm starting to feel a bit better about it. Because yeah, there were some insecurities I had around when I finished the book, feeling like I needed more time. I could still make it better if I had more time, and I'm not sure if it is exactly what I originally planned for. Now I'm like, yeah, nah, this is gonna be good, and she was encouraging me about that, and I was telling her like when I've been telling people about the book, and they all get really excited, and I think this felt really good for her to hear as an editor who also edits many books, which is always a very remote experience. She's behind her computer, also talking through emails and Zoom meetings, and being able to share with her like, here's some of the response I'm getting so far, and allow her to be a part of that. And I said, yeah, people get excited just from me telling them the title. Like they'll say, what's your book about? And I'll say, it's about like calling and purpose. And they're like, whoa. And then I'll say, it's called You Don't Need a Calling. And they're like, oh my God. And they're like already, before I say the subtitle, excited. And then I'll say, an anti-capitalist man. And then right there, they're already, oh my, yes. An anti-capitalist manifesto for a life of purpose. And they're just like, hell yes, I need that. And with my first book, when I told them the title, The God Who Riots, Taking Back the Radical Jesus, we usually get positive responses, but not like that. And that makes me feel really good, because Lisa is the one who helped me come up with the title. Like she gave me that title based on the ideas that I wrote. And the reason I worded it like that is because I actually said that when I hung out with her. Like, you came up with that title. She's like, nah, it was a team, and also it was on what you wrote, being humble about it. And so I guess maybe one could technically say we all came up with the title, but that felt good, involving her in that. And I'm really excited for what's to come from this book when it comes out. And I'm excited for you all to read it and be a part of this, and be able to do some stuff from the book, be able to build a bit of community around this book, and around some of my own dreams and visions and hopes, and other people's dreams and visions and hopes for community. So there's a bit on community, needing more community, a bit of a recap of my trip to Minneapolis, and that's all I got for today. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and I'll see you next week, people. See you later. Bye-bye.